Hey Kev, let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I am your host, W.J. Sheehan, author of the series of books Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters, 12 initial volumes, and all of the regional books, all 7 books of the North American continent are out in paperback, ebook, and Kindle. We're trying to wrap up the last 3 in audio format. So
definitely cause for the royal trumpets.
What a project, Kev. What a freaking undertaking. By the way, folks, that is my brother and co-host, KJ Sheehan, if you're new to the podcast. Yeah, Kev, what a project. The Central is up for approval at audio. And the last 2 audio books will be the Northwest, not to be confused with the Pacific Northwest, and Canada.
All right.
So we're just about ready to cross the marathon finish line and break the tape.
Sounds good.
How you doing, bro? Okay?
I'm doing all right, other than being a little chilly like everybody else in the country.
Yeah, it's freaky, man. But it is January. You know, what can we expect?
Yeah, but here in North Carolina, like usually February is our coldest month.
Really?
So I'm a little worried.
All right. Well, better than getting a foot of snow in northern Florida, and they've got nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that's fair.
No snow shovels. They don't have anything. A foot. Oh, my God. What's going on with that? Did the sun come out and melt it now, or what?
Here in North Carolina?
No, I mean that northern Florida whack
I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody down there.
Yeah, I don't know either, but...
we got a little bit around still from our little snow.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing.
Like wherever you shoveled it or wherever it was plowed, you still have the piles, you know. But
interesting, you know.
Yeah.
It's winter. So what do we have today, brother, in our Cryptids in the News and Other Oddities segment?
Yeah, we are going to the news, Bill. I don't know if you saw this story, but it was covered, like I'm going to talk about it from BBC, British Broadcasting. They discovered this magnificent fossil of a plesiosaur on the south coast of England. Did you see this thing?
I have not, but I'd like to see it.
So I'm going to describe it in detail for everybody, so you got to use your imagination.
Now, you're talking a plesiosaur, correct?
No, a plesiosaur. I thought it was a plesiosaur too.
Right.
So this thing is basically a giant sea monster.
Wow.
That used to live back in the age of the dinosaurs. But what's really interesting here, of course, you could see it being an ancestor of some of the aquatic cryptids that we have legends about, like Nessie. Mm-hmm. So this thing was like 40 feet long when it lived. But what's really interesting about the discovery is they found the head completely intact with the jaws closed and all of the teeth in the jaws.
And this is the one, I'm seeing this now, this is the one that has that giant head that looks really like a uber nasty alligator, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, plesiosaur, yep.
Yeah, plesiosaur. And the head that they discovered is more than 6 feet long.
Wow.
From nose to like back of the eye socket. Ugh. And what's really amazing is the teeth, Bill. Are you looking at that now?
I am not, no.
Okay, so the teeth hang out of the mouth on the top and the bottom, like overlapping and interlocking with one another.
Yeah.
Outside of the jaw.
Oh my God.
So you got like this snaggletooth beast where it looks like, I'm looking at the guy's hand, the teeth, and they're all like fangs.
Yeah.
They must be about 8 inches long.
Oh my God.
All of them. And they're interlocked with one another.
Yeah.
So this thing was found on the southern coast of England, right on the English Channel, across from France, in a place called the Dorset Cliffs, which I hadn't heard of before, but apparently it's like this really flaky rock cliff, a couple of 100 feet high, it looks like, and they've been finding a lot of dinosaur remains in this flaky rock.
Amazing, man.
Yeah, they call it like Jurassic Cliff or something like that.
The coolest thing about the various epochs where the dinosaurs were prevalent on the earth, these things were so freaking uber nasty. I mean, it's just one after another. The power and the strength of the jaws and teeth, the T-Rex, the plesiosaur. You just couldn't have thought up a better concoction of monsters.
No. And this thing, so they say it would have been like the T-Rex of the ocean.
Yeah, man.
The absolute apex predator. Forget the megalodon and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you know how crocodiles snatch people, they're doing their wash and stuff. They just pop up and rip them down. Can you imagine that plesiosaur coming up, giving it a little tail wag and just nailing you?
No, and they go through the bite force comparison.
Okay.
Just to give you a feel. Now, the units that they're using for force are newtons, kind of the physics way instead of pounds. But you'll still be able to see the comparison, even if you don't have a feel for what a newton is. So a T-Rex is 45,000 newtons, and a plesiosaur is 33,000 newtons.
Wow.
So almost the same bite force. And like a lion is 4,000.
Wow.
So basically like 10%.
Wow.
And you, Bill, with your chompers, are about 700 newtons.
Well, it says you. I'm at least 4,000 newtons. You put a T-bone in front of me, Jack, and I'm going to give you 10,000 newtons.
Right.
And we're not talking fig newtons either.
33,000 newtons compared to 4,000 newtons of a lion.
Wow. And a lion has some freaking nasty bite.
Yes.
All you have to do is look at a lion, the width of their jaw and the intensity.
Yeah, big fangs as well.
Yeah, those dogs can bite.
Although not hanging out of its mouth like the plesiosaur.
Oh, my God. What a nasty thing. Isn't it remarkable how these things keep coming to the surface here and there, these unknown things hidden? It's like a Christmas present for an archaeologist, or a paleontologist.
Yeah, what's really interesting, and I'll put some pictures up on our website, BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com, under this episode 284. And it is spectacular how they found it, too. So apparently somebody's walking down the beach, and they see a piece of a skull. And they're like, this is pretty interesting. And then they find out this thing is up in the cliff above where they found it. And it's about halfway from the top of the cliff to the beach where they dug this thing out. And they had to do it by like belaying down from above and dig away at this. And they find the whole skull intact in this cliff.
Now, what about the rest of the skeleton? No?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
But
it's probably there. If the whole head is there.
Yeah, they got the complete skull came out, though.
Yeah.
Boy, that is amazing, man.
Now, what's interesting, too, like they got some real close-up pictures of the snout of this beast. And they say that the snout, and you could see it in the pictures, is dotted with these small pits in the bone.
Okay.
right? And they say that it may have been the site of glands to help it detect changes in water pressure made by prospective prey.
Kind of like, what is that terminology they use on the, well, no, that's different, on the snout of a shark?
Yeah, well, sharks have something similar, like where they can sense electromagnetic energy.
Right, right. I can't think of
the
it.
water.
I can't think of the terminology right now.
Yeah, but same kind of thing on this prehistoric beast. Like, it wasn't bad enough that it was the biggest thing in the ocean with the biggest bite. It actually had some a little extra sensory perception to find you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have that too. I have a super sensitive schnozola for barbecue.
I was going to say you can sniff out that Traeger grill from 2 miles away.
I go like Snagglepuss. I just kind of float up in the air and kind of drift across the countryside, and I land where the barbecue's going on. Remember that stupid stuff, man? The fragrance would come wafting across in the air in the cartoon, and he'd just kind of lift off.
Just lift off of the
float
air.
away like Aladdin on his carpet.
Yeah. Intense. Intense.
You know, I don't think this thing's for sale, but I'd be willing to go 1,000 on it. If anybody knows where this thing is, and I'll offer $1,000 right up front for this skull.
Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere, buddy. But wait till you see the pictures of the cliff the guys were hanging off of digging this thing out.
Oh my God! They're lucky the cliff didn't collapse on them.
Oh well, and it's really like a. You can see the pile of stones at the bottom where it was collapsing while they were digging away.
Boy, oh boy, that's dangerous, man.
Oh, it looks really fragile too. The cliff.
Wow! And what
Not so much
country
the
is
skull.
this in? Great Britain?
Yeah, UK.
Wow!
Right on the south shore of UK, out towards Plymouth and Southampton. Excuse me, west of London.
And what
southwest
body of
London.
water is the cliff joining?
English Channel.
Wow!
Look across and you got France over there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The old Normandy invasion site.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right across the way.
Wow, man, that is incredible, man. So on and on we go. There's always new things being dug up.
100%.
And, you know, Kev, just a little sidelight to go back to the UFO piece we did. I told you our buddy Dave out in Oregon, having seen the clip, the film clip that the stewardess had taken out of that, basically a private jet.
Yeah, private jet.
Dave had cited the exact same thing, which, as you know by now, folks, is what I saw close up and personal, a pair of them. Dave saw it driving the logging truck in the timber at 2 a.m. in the morning out in Oregon. And so these things are around out there. You know, you have my up-close and personal account of a pair of them in broad daylight at very close range. You have the stewardess and the pilots, the crew, in that private business jet. I believe they were returning from the Bahamas.
Exactly.
Filming this thing at altitude above them. And here's Dave, our logging buddy, out in Oregon, seeing one at 2 a.m. in the morning up in the sky.
Yeah, 100%.
It's an unmistakable sight. When you see it, it's very unique. There's a definitive border around this circle. And I can tell you up front, when I saw the pair I saw, the interior... Kev, do you remember this toy or counter gadget, like an impulse buy thing? It was a circle made of plastic, and inside was like this swirly stuff. You could like turn it and it would swirl around or move it with your fingers. Do you remember that?
Not silly putty.
No, it was like a liquid sealed in a case.
Yeah.
And it was one of those impulse buys. You know how they put them on the counter in like 7-Eleven and stuff for a few.
It's like $300.
Yeah, that's a real impulse buy. But yeah, no, this looked like swirling plasma, almost, and I'd also add to it like electrically charged, whatever that would mean. I'm choosing words that would describe what I see. It just looked like it was moving and alive in the interior of this hard body, like it was something was encased by the border. Very, very weird, man. You'd have to see it to believe it, and it's
wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. What it is, have no idea.
But basically, Dave saw something really similar to what this flight attendant and pilots and other pilots too saw.
Yeah, so he had seen the video that you posted, and then he went on to YouTube, or maybe the link brought him to YouTube, and he said, "Son of a gun, that's exactly what I saw."
Wow.
Yeah, so we got him all over the country, to be continued, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, let me take us now. I am uncertain when I looked at this. I decided to do this today. I have two accounts here, and the reason I chose the two was because the one, in actuality, led into the discovery of the second one. So I'm going to do them both back to back. Both of these came from a good friend of the podcast, Neil. He's down in Georgia. I changed his last name to Granger because I don't use people's real names, even if they say I can. Now, this hair-raising encounter was shared with me by Neil, a resident of Georgia, and this is basically what Neil had to say. Bill, I'd like to begin with some background on my stepfather, which will give insight into exactly how the things we will discuss came to be. He and his brother had a partnership in several agricultural endeavors, one of which was peanut farming. He was wealthy. On one occasion, he and his partner were repairing the roof of a barn or drying shed for peanuts when his partner fell from the roof and was paralyzed, dying from his injuries a few years later. After this all had occurred, my stepfather had a change of heart about the future and what direction he wanted to take. So, in 2008, he began to acquire tracts of land. The end game was to form a hunting club, whereby people could lease these tracts to hunt on. He had run some ads in a hunting magazine advertising the availability of the tracts, and one of the respondents was a company from Ocala, Florida, seeking to entertain some of their guests with hunting. The arrangement at the time was that they would fly in by private plane, and we would pick them up and bring them to our clubhouse. This, by the way, is in Calhoun County, Georgia, which had one street light in the middle of town and a population of just over 500 people. The clubhouse was a renovated farmhouse on one of the tracks, which now had 11 beds, 2 of which were bunks. It was in 2019 where my stepfather had passed, having been murdered by his nephew, after which all of these lease contracts that were in place were canceled, and I took over all of his affairs. Now, this is a true story, folks. There was, at the time, a family member from one of the companies who had a previous lease contract that I had been friendly with. He had contacted me in the hope of still being able to hunt in these parts after all of this had gone down. I told him that he could hunt on 90 acres by my mother's house, and if anything else became available, I'd let him know, which it eventually did. Now, here's a little background on our hunting agreement relative to the land. Hunters could kill deer and turkeys in season, but these Florida boys like to come up and kill feral hogs in the off-season, which I welcomed them to do with open arms. And it was during one of these off seasons that the encounter had occurred. Our agreement stated that no matter how many hogs you killed, all must be taken from the peanut field to its borders, where the buzzards and possums would make short work of their remains. If you know nothing about hogs, they love any root vegetables, and peanuts are a favorite of theirs in these parts. These fellows were also leasing some land from a neighbor of mine at the time, whose property was adjoining mine. So, about a year later, a 200-acre tract had become available down by Pachitla Creek, which included a marshy kind of swampland that's part of the acreage. And I had called to tell John of it being available if he was interested, and he was. When John arrived, the two of us jumped into my truck, and I drove him down to the tract, stopping in a small clearing. That is when I said, John, if you're ever going to see a Bigfoot, it's going to be right here. So John asked me, do you believe in Bigfoot, Neil? I told him I had listened to a convincing man talking about his encounter on television that I believed was legitimate. And so I said, yes, I do think Bigfoot is real. Well, I had no idea what would happen next. And that is when he told me what happened on my leased land in years past. He and Matt had come up in the off-season to bang out some hogs for fun and hunted them at night. They were both toting AR rifles with a .308 bore. John's gun had a night vision spotting scope, while Matt's rifle had a thermal. They had been staying in the clubhouse and drove up into this area after darkness, entering my neighbor's property, where they also had a lease. They were leaning on the hood of the truck, scoping out the peanut field, looking for the hogs, and the hogs were there. They shot about 6 of them when John scoped out what he said was a 300-pounder, which is a big feral porker in anyone's book, and he shot it, wounding it. The hog, said John, walked out of the field, heading towards my land, going into the woods. And the two boys followed its blood trail using the thermal imager, locating it sitting on its haunches and squealing inside of the trees. The trees in this tract are long-leaf pines that grow tall and straight, the kind used for making telephone poles. And the woods are clean and open, making them perfect to investigate at night, especially with the equipment they were carrying. The hog was sitting right in front of them at 50 feet when Matt picked up on a glowing red thermal to their right-hand side that was enormous. And it leaped in the blink of an eye, jumping behind the hog and tearing its head from the body, right before their eyes, and they ran like hell. They raced back to the clubhouse, locked all the windows and doors, and sat for the entire night in the corner of a room with their rifles. The clubhouse was only a quarter of a mile from where this had just happened. John said to Matt that they had to go back out the following day according to the lease agreement and drag the dead hogs out of the field. John wanting to go by this old homestead on the verge of collapsing, formerly belonging to an old farmhand named Nathan, who lived there. The house was elevated from the ground, and John knew that the hogs would settle in under the house and they could pick some off. When they got out of the truck, something let out the most horrific scream. John said that he knew it was a Bigfoot, and they tore out of there. John and Matt both going back to Florida after these events. I later spoke to him, asking why two guys carrying 308s, hold on, would run from anything, to which he said, The way this thing had moved, Neil, and dispatched the hog, I just wanted to get the hell out of there and quick. I could not say that I blamed them one bit for what they did. I later met my neighbor down by the same spot, stopping the truck and telling him what had happened, knowing it was on his land and not mine where the event occurred. When we got to Nathan's house, I told him about the screaming that had occurred right where we now were, and he said to me, "Well, that explains Nathan's thing." Apparently, when Nathan was still alive and working, he regularly talked about the screams he heard, the guys nicknaming it Nathan's thing. No one realized at the time it was the scream of a Bigfoot, which in fact could tear the head from a 300-pound hog's body. John said for a solid year, every night he went to sleep, he would see this thing in his dreams. And now we go into the second encounter, which came to bear from that. And I'll call this a sister sighting to the previous one because it was also told to me by Neil. It became known because he had shared this previous peanut farm incident with a fellow farmer in Georgia. And this is what Neil had to say. It was a Sunday afternoon, Bill, that my wife and I had driven over to where John had been driven out of the area with Matt by the screaming. This spot was the intersection of 3 different farms. The one farmer, as I have already told you after hearing what happened, had told me the story about Nathan's thing, which you have already heard. But the third farm's owner knew nothing of any of this at the time. So my wife and I are sitting in the truck when we saw Rodney coming up the dirt road in our direction, and he stopped to chat alongside of us. Rodney is a straight-shooting, no-nonsense type of guy and a great farmer. So I brought him up to date on what had happened right where we were sitting regarding John and Matt's experience. He asked me if I remembered when Jeff worked for his dad, Jeff having passed several years earlier. As a matter of fact, Jeff and I had gone to school together, and we had gone different ways in life as far as work was concerned. He had taken a job working for Rodney's father on his farm. Now, before I continue, allow me to bring you up to speed with some farming insider information that will help paint the picture better as to just what Jeff had experienced. These days, we use GPS to guide our tractors when creating rows for planting, keeping everything straight and true. But when Jeff had his sighting, the tractors were rigged with hydraulic arms extending from the sides of the tractor, these being lowered into the ground to cut grooves in the earth. Generally, you would pick a mark on the far end of the field, such as a bush or a tree, setting your course for it as your first row. When you reach the end of that field, you would turn around and use your cut from the previous row as your gauge. You'd lower the arm into that groove, giving you the spacing now for the next pass back down the field, heading back to where you began. Doing things this way, you'd end up with a nicely spaced row. You'd end up with nicely spaced rows in the field. Now, Jeff and the other men involved in the day's work were set up in an adjoining field, separated from the field they were going to mark out by a tract of woods that Jeff would have to drive through with the tractor. The others stayed behind preparing the seed and other equipment for the planting phase as Jeff finished cutting the rows. So, Jeff, having driven through the woods, had just begun what would be his first row, lowering the hydraulic arms into the soil and beginning to run the tractor down the field when he saw a Bigfoot standing on the edge of the field looking at him. And he completely freaked out, forgetting about everything, including that he has the hydraulics lowered away from the side of the tractor still in the ground. He comes speeding back through the woods, running with the tractor at twice the average speed, tearing the hydraulics and arms clear off the tractor. When he stopped, my father said he got out of the tractor and started walking around in circles, holding his head in his hands, and he could not even get an answer out of him as to what was wrong. At that point, my father thought something was seriously wrong with him in medical terms. After a short while, one of his farmhands, an old black gentleman, went over and tried to talk to him, which he did. He returned having spoken to him. He told my father that Jeff had seen a Bigfoot in the field. All of this happened in Clay County, the next county over from Calhoun, where the first incident with Jeff and Matt, with John and Matt had transpired. Having heard this now from Rodney, it left me wondering, was this the same beast they had encountered? Or are there more of them than we can even imagine in these parts, which would not surprise me, to be quite honest with you. There you have it, Kev. Back-to-back encounters, Clay and Calhoun County, Georgia.
Wow, rural Georgia. Lots of Bigfoot stuff going on, huh?
Yeah, now Neil still has hunting tracks down there.
Right.
And he sent me a picture of the signage of one of the hunting tracks. The actual name slips me right now, but he had two varnish finished clear telephone pole type logs, maybe let's just say 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
And hanging in between them is the sign that was routed out, the lettering and whatnot. And it's something Bigfoot Hunting Lodge like that, something like that.
Oh, yeah, like a trail sign.
Yeah, like a big trail sign. And he included Bigfoot in the title because that is actually the tract where Matt and John saw the Bigfoot tear the head off of this 300-pound pig.
Yikes.
Can you imagine the freaking power of some...
I can't imagine.
Yankee... Now, we were just talking about the plesiosaur with the fangs hanging out, interlocking. I mean, that thing could probably snap the head off of a porker. But...
it would swallow the porker whole.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Yeah. And, but the strength required to tear this leathery skin living head off of a 300-pound pig. I don't even know how that happens, man.
No,
it's like
it's crazy.
Snapping a carrot in half or something.
It's crazy.
It is crazy, But there you have it. 2 Bigfoot encounters. And interesting, when I interviewed Neil, and he's really a good guy, man. Neil, you're out there. God bless you, man. I hope you're listening. He had sent me pictures out of his equipment working in the field, as a lot of people do, giving me insight into their lives and their businesses. And when I looked at it, I said to myself, wow. I could see these guys, they're leaning on the hood of this pickup truck at night with their thermal and the night vision looking for some pigs, just blowing them out. And it brings you into the woods, it brings you into the location where Neil had said there was about 500 people in this whole area. I mean, 500 people.
Yeah, super rural.
I mean, if I go down to the end of my block and come back up the other street, there's probably 500 people.
Well, yeah, but you're not living in the country.
I'm just saying, Kev,
Yeah.
Sparsely populated, big tracts of land, hunting tracts, peanut, cotton farms. There is plenty of stuff around there, folks. Plenty of country, plenty of woodland for creatures of any sort, including a Bigfoot, to wander around and get lost in. And if you have a chance encounter with one, well, you can consider yourself lucky because it's a rare occasion indeed. Now, Kev, have you been watching the new set of shows on Expedition Bigfoot?
No.
Oh, man.
No, I changed my TV provider. I got to find it because there's kind of they're hard to find right now. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody's posted them on YouTube, current episodes. But one of the comments they had made on there was over 500 reported sightings annually in Washington State. That's just those reported. Which rings true to what I've always said. There's got to be tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of people out there that have seen a Bigfoot, a Yeti, a Yowie around the globe that we will never know.
Yeah, well, certainly I can't say most, a lot of folks that have seen them don't say anything about it for fear of, repercussions in their job, etc.
Now, look at Dave, for instance. I talk to Dave all the time. He's an insider for me as to what's going on with the logging operations and Bigfoot activity, which is plentiful.
Yeah.
If Dave hadn't seen the video of the UFO out of that...
Oh, yeah, he wouldn't have said anything to you.
He would not have mentioned a thing about what happened, and I had just spoken to him. He never would have mentioned that 2 o'clock sighting of what I had seen and what was in that video.
No, great example.
So, and this is somebody who's very open with me and talks to me about all kinds of stuff,
Yep.
Let alone people who don't want to talk to anybody. So I'm just blown away by this stuff. It just...
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's wild stuff.
And by the way, folks, if you've seen something and you want to kick it around with me, contact us at BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com. Hit the contact button and let me know who you are, where you are. Leave me your phone number. And I'll get in touch with you, Now, I've spoken to a couple of people recently, guys, if you're listening, and I asked them if they could write up in brief format what we had discussed on the phone, because some of these conversations are really involved. I haven't heard back from you guys yet, so I'm hoping you're going to stay true to your word and write up what we discussed and get them back over to me. But this happens a lot, Kev.
Yeah, well, people, talking about something and writing about it requires a totally different level of energy. So, maybe encourage them, doesn't have to be anything fancy, not a literary work of art, doesn't have to be grammatically correct.
Right. Now, I just try to get the facts in place and then I'll spruce it up,
Yeah, or make it worse.
Yeah, or make it worse. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, my goodness. So, Kev, what do we have in our listener mail today?
Yeah, we got some good listener mail, Bill. So, Sharon wrote in, and she says, "Hello, Bill and Kevin. I hope you're both well. I love listening to your show. I've heard every single episode, so thank you, Sharon. Thank you for the hours of entertainment and knowledge you have shared with us. I have also bought every audiobook available of the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods series, and I love them so much." Good job, Sharon, setting an example.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to comment on your recent podcast with regard to large drones being spotted on the East Coast. I believe they belong to the U.S. government as a tactic to fool the public into thinking they are a type of UFO. That is my personal opinion that I wanted to share with you. Please keep up the wonderful podcast. I look forward to listening every week. Take care, Sharon. Now, Bill, I'm not sure what Sharon means here. She's saying they just put it up there just to make people think there's UFOs. I'm not sure. What's your take on that?
Well, I kind of get what she's looking at. Why? The question is, why would they do that, though? If they were launching these things to make people think UFOs were flying around, or in other words, Kevin, somebody with that mindset is probably thinking we're being set up for something after the fact. Like, we need to protect you from these things, and therefore we're going to do thus, thus, and so.
Okay.
You know, like you put up this ploy, and then you build up around it what's going to be necessary to defend against this. But you notice this whole thing has kind of died off.
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about it on the podcast, but, I read about it a bunch all over the place. And I mean, not necessarily the most reliable places, but message boards, stuff like that, all public realm stuff. And the best explanation that I heard was that there was some kind of medical radioactive waste that was missing, like a shipment of medical radioactive waste or some type of radioactive material that was missing, and that these drones were in fact government drones, Sharon, but that's why people thought they were flying a grid pattern, because they were searching and sniffing for this radioactive material. And that kind of makes sense to me. Again, I don't have any other data, but I was like, that could be. And then they wouldn't tell anybody what they were doing, right? Because then they'd scare the bejesus out of people, when in fact maybe people shouldn't be scared.
Well, there are nefarious characters out there, Kev, as we all know, that are looking to do the public harm.
Absolutely.
And if somebody in a bad state of mind had somehow gained access to dirty radioactive waste, they could make a dirty bomb.
No doubt
and
about
all
it.
you need is anything to explode and send this stuff. Right? You have the dirt. You've got the radioactive waste. All you need is a large explosion to disperse it. And who knows how many people might have been affected by it or what the effects would be,
Right. 100%.
But there are filthy fiends out there that need to be disposed of, who are, plotting and planning to hurt people. And we can't do enough about it, as far as I'm concerned, to get rid of these creeps.
Yeah.
Maybe we should bring some of the old mountain boys from down in Appalachia up here and let them just march around and have at it. Bib overalls and shotguns.
There's probably a better solution, Bill.
Bib overalls and shotguns.
Yeah, they might shoot some of the wrong people.
Oh, my
Just
God.
saying.
What a...
Just saying.
Yeah, just a dirty bomb. No, it makes sense. And why would they have to tell you? We don't need to have everything explained to us.
No, exactly.
There are secrets that are good secrets.
It's appropriate that they're
Absolutely.
a secret.
And I'm all for the military keeping our best under wraps.
Exactly.
I don't need to know everything they're doing. It's just good to know they're doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
So, very
Cool.
good.
All right, one last email this week, Bill, from Jennifer.
Okay.
Hello, Bill and KJ. I love your podcasts, and I just wanted to wish you both a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year. Also, you mentioned on your recent Christmas episode about the scary German fairy tales.
Oh, yeah.
What was the name of the book, Bill?
Der Ultimative Stromrepeater.
And this is great. Now, you probably don't know this, Bill, but she says... she says the scary German fairy tales. She says, I think on the show The Office, Dwight Schrute talks about the book and how his parents and grandparents used to read the book to him as a child. So funny. Keep up the great work. By the way, Bill, I'm originally from Queens, New York, and I find your New York accent very comforting. Lots of laughs. So I bet you haven't seen The Office, Bill. Have you seen The Office with Dwight Schrute?
No, but, Kev, let me read the English translation off the cover of this book, because the book I have has the original German and the English. So the actual title of the book is called The Ultimate Shock-Headed Peter, or horrible stories and noisy pictures. So, noisy pictures and horrible stories. Nothing, nothing you'd want to keep from your small child at the bedside, you understand?
Yeah, and Bill, and for anybody else that hasn't seen this episode of The Office, I forgot about it until Jennifer mentioned it. So Dwight Schrute is this guy who works in the Dunler Mifflin paper sales office, and he lives in like Amish country in Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, his old German roots, and he's a beet farmer, and just not that there's anything wrong with being a beet farmer. It's probably super profitable these days. But, he's a little backwards, maybe a lot backwards. So it sounds perfect that Dwight would say that, and he would be proud of it too. Like, oh, these wonderful stories. How can you not like them? It taught us life lessons, Otherwise, we'll cut your fingers off.
Kev, I just opened this book. I have it next to me on a music stand. And now this is a children's book, folks. In one of the, as they call them, noisy pictures, the artwork in them is really cool as well. The color, the vivid colors in the depictions. In one picture, this is a children's book. There's two characters opposing each other on the page. One is pointing in the air with a flag and the Jolly Roger on it. The other guy's facing him with a bat in his hand and giving him the middle finger.
Classic German literature.
And then there's this little Oriental guy that looks like Fu Manchu. And he's walking around with a grimace on his face and a hangman's noose in his hand.
Hey, he's not that happy.
Yeah,
though.
nothing like a little joy for the children before they rest for the evening.
Yes. Get some rest, children. Or you'll have a visitor.
Oh, my goodness. And I told you, my coworker, Paula, she comes from Latvia. And she told me that the books that her grandmother used to read to her was worse than this.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's up with them over there.
They're a little extreme.
Yeah, a little bit over the top with what they think is proper, Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good.
Well, is that it, Kev?
That's it this week, Bill. Great podcast. And, look up, I put the pictures up under this episode of the plesiosaur. Check him out. He's quite the beast.
Yes, I got to have a look at that myself now. And by the way, folks, if you should be walking through the long-leaf pine trees in Georgia, or perhaps wandering through the mountains in Vermont, Maine, Colorado, or perhaps in the forests of Texas, you best remember one thing, my friends. Always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. Sleep tight.